How old is the oldest tree? Where does an incredibly beautiful tree grow? How big can trees be? How do predatory plants hunt? Watch this episode until the end and you'll learn it and much more. Today, I'll submerge you into a surprising world of flora and tell you about the most unusual, record-breaking, and beautiful trees and plants you'll definitely be struck by. What do you think? How old is the oldest tree on the planet? It's known that trees can live long, so maybe you'll say something like a couple of years old. Or someone considers that the record breaker is already some half a thousand years old. If you're like this, you've made a mistake, a grave mistake. The oldest tree on the planet is almost 5,000 years old. This sounds like something absolutely insane and unreal, but that's the mere truth. The name of this tree is Methuselah. As far as I'm concerned, it ideally suits the tree. After all, if you didn't know, Methuselah is a biblical forefather of mankind that survived to be 969 years old. He was the oldest man whose age is recorded in the Bible. The scientists cannot specify the absolutely accurate datum when the seed was laid Methuselah grew from. According to calculations, this happened in 2831 BC. This way, the tree is now 4,855 years old or so. It's obviously a big figure, but how much? To give you some idea, Methuselah was already 200 years old when they started to build the legendary Pyramid of Cheops. When the tree was young, they started to rear Stonehenge, whereas in Mesopotamia they wrote the Epic of Gilgamesh. In a nutshell, it was long, long ago. Methuselah itself belongs to the species of the Great Basin bristlecone pine. These pines live for a long time, in principle. Anyway, it's not as long as Methuselah, about 2,000 in general. Who knows, maybe the tree will be there as much again. Anyway, Methuselah is under guard, to such an extent that hardly anyone knows where exactly it grows. The authorities prevent vandalism concerning the record breaker. Who knows, maybe they defend the tree not against vandals, but scientists. What does it have to do with this? The thing is that not so long ago, there was another record breaker named Prometheus. It was even older than Methuselah. Its age was estimated at 5,000 years old and more. Prometheus belonged to the same species as Methuselah, the Great Basin bristlecone pine, and grew up in the territory of Nevada. Where are the photos of this tree? Well, there's only a stump left as we can see in the shots. This is all that remained from Prometheus. As I've already told, it was not about vandals, but scientists. In other words, about a researcher. In 1963, he studied Prometheus and other local trees. A year later, he felled the tree. It was subsequently divided into parts and sent to different places for research. It's still unknown whether that scientist knew about its age and value. Either he intentionally spoiled the record breaker or he cut the tree in good faith. Anyway, now the chances are that Methuselah will become an absolute record holder in history. There are just a couple of centenaries left to exist. For such a resilient plant, it's nothing. Do you know what trees are not less enduring than these legendary pines? Giant sequoias. I think you've heard about these American trees that do not only live long but stand out for simply huge dimensions. It's exactly among the trees of these species that you have to look for another record holder in the world of flora. Its name is General Sherman. This is what a big and massive tree on the planet is called. When you look at this giant, you don't believe that it's generally possible. Sherman is 275 feet tall. This is not the tallest tree, but in terms of its weight and volume, it is second to none. The volume of its trunk is estimated at 52,000 cubic feet, and it weighs almost 2,000 tons. Scientists have calculated that if you fell this champion and put it to matches, you'll be able to produce 5 billion matches. Imagine how much paper or different wooden items could be produced from this giant. Needless to say, nobody's going to cut it. The tree is under careful guard. After all, it's unique and old. Not as old as Methuselah, but still, Sherman is 2,700 years old. As far as I'm concerned, it's an honored age. For all this time, the tree managed to become stronger and adapt to the environment. Among other things, the sequoia became capable of quick regeneration, grew sturdy roots to an extent that even storms wouldn't be able to fell it, developed its bark, and made it very thick. By the way, there's another interesting tree with surprising bark. You'll learn about it later. For now, I suggest that we should continue a conversation about big trees. I think you've already checked out what a thick trunk General Sherman has. It's clear the tree is big and massive. It cannot be otherwise. At the same time, there are not not-so-tall trees with their no less surprising trunks. Personally, I liked this specimen. This is a baobab from Madagascar. For sure, you remember the school lessons that the baobab is one of the thickest trees on the planet. The diameter of its trunk can reach 26 feet. However, this is a special baobab. It's called T-top baobab. This name suits it well. Firstly, this baobab is visually similar to a T-top. Secondly, this is literally a real T-top. It also has water. As baobabs grow in the dry climate, they accumulate water supplies and increase in volume. They need water in the period of drought. The T-top did a better job than others. Scientists consider that this unusual T-top can hold 117,000 liters of water. If this baobab were alive and generous and invited people to drink tea, 585,000 people would get a cup of tea. The example may sound stupid, but it illustrates how incredible this tree is. The T-top baobab has a very thick trunk, right? But don't think that it's a limit or a record. In reality, it's far from it. It's Tool, one of the most unusual trees on our planet, that holds the record. It's not a species, but the name of a separate tree. At least visually, it may seem that I cheated you and there are several trees here. However, it's not the case. The thing is that this giant has the thickest trunk in the world. It's more than 118 feet around. This is several times more than baobabs have. In addition, the height of the tree is a little bit more than 114 feet. To embrace this tree, you need 30 people. This tree grows on the square not far away from the church in the Mexican city of Santa Maria del Toul. Needless to say, Toul is one of the most important landmarks. The record holder is also included in the UNESCO World Heritage List and considered a natural monument in Mexico. It's as if all the titles had not been enough. Toul was attributed another one, the Tree of Life. This is because many local residents depend on this tree as a source of earnings. After all, many people come to the city to see the flora record holder. There's another Tree of Life in the world. Though it has the same name, it has another essence. It's a tree in Bahrain that is no less than 400 years old. The tree grows in the desert where it's literally the only one. There are no other plants or sources of water closely. It's incredible, but the tree somehow manages not only to survive but also bloom. In general, it does well. How's this possible? Scientists think that the Tree of Life can be something like an iceberg. In other words, its crown is only a small part of what we can see. According to what we suppose, its roots can go as deep as several thousand feet where they can find a source of water. Other scientists consider that the Tree of Life can extract water and nutrients from the sand. There's also a third version. According to it, this is no usual tree, but a godlike one. Some religious people consider that the Garden of Eden was located there, the very Eden where Adam and Eve live. Of course, it's impossible to confirm this, but the version is beautiful. Who knows? Maybe it will turn out to be true. What can be tougher than a tree that, by some miracle, lives alone amidst a scorching desert? What about a tree that contains a structure somewhere inside? In other words, it's a chapel. That sounds strange and incomprehensible, but appears to be the case. This is an oak. It's called Chanel Chapel, or Oak Chapel. This is a massive old oak in France with a real chapel inside. Yes, right in the tree. In reality, there are even two chapels and praying rooms inside. You can reach up the winding stairs. It's surprising that the chapels together with the tree are not very likely to remain for a long time. The oak is old. They support it by bearers and columns and change its bark for an artificial one. Anyway, it cannot last eternally. And now let's talk a little about palms. You all know how palms look. Everyone has a notion of their image. I think many people imagine not a very high palm somewhere on the heavenly beach. At least it's my association. But did you know that palms can be like this one? It seems to me that we all drew palms this way, on a thin trunk and very, very tall. It turned out that we sketched the real Quindio wax palm. This is the tallest palm on the planet. It can reach up to almost 196 feet. Its trunk is covered by a very thick layer of wax. This is where the name of the plant comes from. This miracle grows in the territory of Colombia and in the north of Peru. Now you know where you need to go to personally see incredible plants. Speaking of palms, in Amazonia, so-called walking palms. The locals say that these plants can move. Truth be told, they do this very slowly, for several feet a year. It's impossible to notice these movements just by observing a palm. On the other hand, we can see another plant in motion, Venus flytrap. It doesn't go away, but everyone comes, flies up and creeps to visit it. Flytrap is happy about this. It's a predatory and carnivorous plant, and with it, a very treacherous one. When an insect falls into this red zone, it provokes several sensitive hairs on the surface. This is what triggers Flytrap, and it reflectively closes its dreadful trap, looking like an alien predator's teeth. Flies, mosquitoes, snails, caterpillars, this plant can eat any small creatures. It's indiscriminate to food. You can get out of the trap, but that's difficult. If the prey manages to break free, Flytrap clamps down the trap maximum densely, closes the snare, and forms something like a stomach there to digest the prey with the aid of a special acid. This is not the only predatory plant in the world. There's also a water wheel plant among them. As far as I'm concerned, this plant is even more treacherous. Firstly, it's rootless. Secondly, it doesn't look as frightening as Venus flytrap. Thirdly, it's tougher at dealing with prey. Aldrovanda inhabits lakes and correspondingly hunts water dwellers. As a rule, those are small water vertebrates. Again, we have to deal with a snare that works like a trap. The holes of the trap are directly outside and covered by thin hairs that allow the trap to clamp down around any prey that was located in its vicinity. This happens instantly. That's why small animals literally stood no chance for rescue. If you can somehow get out of the trap of the flytrap, you won't get away from this snare. Some plants are predatory, whereas others are parasites. There are many, with one of them that stands out especially. Here it is. It's the Hydnora africana plant with the strangest appearance on the planet. It looks like some alien monster or a beast from a horror film, Demogorgon from Stranger Things, a peach stone, and many other things. Everyone will see something of his own here. This is a classical parasite. Coloration and structure features, as well as the foul smell of flowers, attract insects feeding on carrion. Beetles penetrate jackal food, creep in the flowers, especially in their lower part with reproductive organs contributing to their pollination. Beetle females do not only find food in the flowers, but also lay eggs. This sounds dreadful, and the plant itself is not pleasant. However, you shouldn't consider it a monster. In fact, it doesn't only parasitize, but also does good. Thus, different animals like eating Hydnora's fruit, whereas some African residents use the plant to cure heart diseases. Our next plant from this selection grows on the other side of the world, in South America. This is Victoria amazonica, aka the lily trotter's water lily. This is a very big water lily that's adored by everybody in South America. It's even a national flower in Guyana and depicted on the coat of arms of this state. But it's not this, but the features of its leaves that are much more interesting. They're not only very big and wide, they're also incredibly resistant from the point of view that they can withstand huge weight, including that of a man. Yes, the leaves can go underwater a little, but as a whole, you can freely stand on it and not be afraid of falling into the water. Truth be told, such things happen. The leaves of Victoria are very sturdy, but there's a limit to everything. Let's come back to the trees. What do we know about trees in general? For example, that a tree is a floating material that doesn't drown, right? At least we can say so about the bark. However, not all trees are alike. Schmid's birch is different from others. Firstly, this birch is not white, but black, which is interesting. However, it's bark that's much more interesting. It's incredibly firm, to such an extent that you won't cut it with a usual axe. Scientists say that its wood is 1.5 times firmer than cast iron. This miracle grows in the Far East, Japan, and China. The local people say that even bullets bounce from this tree. In addition, Schmid's birch is resistant to acid, biopests, decay, and burning. You wouldn't build a boat from its wood, it would drown. On the other hand, Schmid's birch can be an analogy to high-cost material. Unfortunately, you won't encounter it so often in nature. As far as I'm concerned, Schmid's birch is not only unusual, but beautiful. After all, you won't encounter a black birch everywhere. However, there are trees in the world that are much more beautiful. Many people call rainbow eucalyptus the most beautiful. Basically, you can meet it in the Philippines and Indonesia. It's also cultivated in other countries. This species of eucalyptus stands out for a surprising coloration. The tree seems to be converted into a graffiti canvas and painted, or some color festival took place somewhere around. In fact, a beautiful color is the result of gradual crust separation that goes from the trunk in thin stripes. In its place, new bark starts to gradually form with a huge content of chlorophyll. The bark changes its color depending on the chlorophyll age and concentration. The older a tree is, the more colorful it becomes. There's another surprising tree you cannot force your eyes away. This is phoenix flower from Madagascar. It's much simpler to remember it under another name, flame tree. Everything is de facto. The tree seems to burn with a red flame. In the spring and in the beginning of the summer, the tree gets covered by red flowers merging into big beams. This fire holiday lasts about a couple months, after which, when it comes to the autumn, pods are formed on the twigs. That's about it. Write in the comments which tree impressed you most of all. Leave a like and subscribe to the channel.